All right, welcome to Built with Grit. I am your host and strategic partner in cost reduction, Luis Fernandez, and today we're joined by Brad Leavitt, president and founder of AFT Construction. But before we get into that, if you're a fan of inspiring people and informative content, you come to the right place because that's all we do. So go ahead, blast that like button. And with that, Brad, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today.
I'm excited. I'm excited that you're here. I follow you on various social media accounts because you guys are kind of everywhere, right? You've got
Yeah, we
you've got the YouTube, you've got the Bizfluence, you're on LinkedIn, you're literally, full on every platform, right?
we are. I believe even Clubhouse to TikTok to House. I mean, Instagram, Facebook. Yeah, all of them, and even have our own podcast. It's super key when you think about just your marketing and messaging and branding. Right? How can you broadcast that message to the best audience you can? It's a diverse audience. It's a different demographic on every platform, and catering that message to your platform is super key.
That's really interesting. And so actually, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do? Because then I have a question about your social media strategy, right? So let's talk a
Yeah.
little bit about what you do and specifically who your clients are and the like.
Yeah, for sure. So I own a construction company located in the greater Phoenix area. We're actually based out of Scottsdale, Arizona. And my company name is a Finer Touch Construction. Most everyone knows us as AFT Construction from social media, as we've discussed. And we specialize in residential and commercial new build construction. Now we also have a renovation division, remodels that we will do. Um, but primarily it's new build custom. We say on the more custom side, the higher clientele, we like to do the fun projects with the gun ranges and the lazy rivers and, things that challenge us, right? A hillside built into the side of a mountain. And, we've been fortunate to be selected to do the Net Zero Home of the Year, Professional Builders Home of the Year, which is actually here in Scottsdale, which is a home that's net zero. It's a building science home. Actually, the client is a building science guru who consults companies all over the country. So, we want, if it can be built, we want to try to figure out a way to do it right and do it in an energy efficient way. So, been surrounded by an amazing team. We've been in business 8.5 years now here in Phoenix, and there's 15 of us, and grateful for each of my employees for sure.
You guys have done some amazing stuff. You're very humble about. I mean, it's. I think anybody listening is like, oh, I wonder what it is. Like I've seen some of these. Like, what was the one? It was like this full on window that was like 40 feet long, and it like backed up into this thing and made the yard part of the. Oh, it's just like, whoa, that was amazing. I mean, some really incredible builds.
Well, I appreciate that. We've been really lucky. We'll get into the social media and how that's played a key impact, right, in our growth and some of the projects we've been fortunate to be selected on. But yeah, you chase experience, not money. I tell people all the time, chase experience, not money. And I was fortunate out of college. I did construction management. I grew up in the industry in San Diego, born and raised San Diego, worked as an electrician, did construction management up at BYU, moved here in 2005. Worked for an amazing firm. And to be honest, I was underpaid, but had an opportunity to work on this amazing $300 million hotel and resort in Paradise Valley. And it was a great experience, right? It just catapulted me to be in the position I'm in now. And, from a marketing side, you think, how can we change the industry? How can we disrupt the industry? Especially from a building side, communication, how can I show that messaging? And then in turn, show some of the cool stuff we're doing. Like you mentioned, the two corner multi sliders that meet at a corner and completely automate and open up. So now you have this huge, expansive, entertaining area. It's just amazing. And wait till you see it furnished, because we've been furnishing it and I haven't posted any furniture shots, but
Wow.
when you see it fully done, it's pretty impressive.
I just yeah, just some of this stuff has really blown my mind, and like you said about disrupting the industry. Now you kind of gave us your story there in about 90 seconds, and you blew through this. Uh, so wait, did I hear you say you got a degree, but you were an electrician, and then you
Yeah.
did?
So my grandfather, when he retired from the Navy in Los Angeles, he moved to San Diego. He was actually stationed there and then started an electrical company. And he had 6 boys. My father was the youngest. And two of my uncles actually took over the company from my grandfather. So through high school, I worked for them as an electrician. And I was kind of the grunt that had to go under the house in the attic. I had to do all the the stuff you didn't want to do, and we worked in homes in Coronado Island and Rancho Santa Fe and La Jolla, these beautiful homes in San Diego. And I just had this passion for beautiful homes, luxury homes. And, I remember one site in high school, I was on a project and on the job site, and the superintendent was telling me a bunch of stuff to do. And I'm like, I want to be that guy. I want to be the one telling everyone what to do and directing, right? Directing traffic. And ended up going to school, studied construction management, which is a little catered to commercial. Most people that do that go into, work for a large commercial firm. But I always want to do high-end residential. And that's what we're doing now. So I feel super grateful. It's a lot of fun working with clients to build their dream home where they've worked and saved their entire life, and now they're doing something that they enjoy for their primary residence. So that brings, a lot of fulfillment to the day.
Yeah. So, so you went you were working for another company, and you said you had this $300 million project that you were in charge of. Is that?
That's correct. So you always think about how to catapult to the next level, right? You envision where you're going. So out of college, there's no luxury firm that's going to hire this green kid out of school. So I went to work for a production builder, and I was there for almost a year, and it was a great experience. I didn't want to do production homes as a career, but it was a great stepping stone to understand, entry level homes, production schedules, timelines, leadership, accountability, teamwork. I mean, all things that go into management, right? And a position opened up. There was a custom builder in Scottsdale that had been selected to build this $350 million hotel resort in Paradise Valley called the Mauna Lucia. Amazing project. And they were hiring, and the pay was not high, but I felt I was qualified to do it, that I could do it. So I applied. I had my job interview, was selected, fortunately. And again, it's good. Chase experience, not money. I knew that this is what I wanted to do, and this was the door opening. So the pay wasn't there, but that's okay. I think a lot of us in our careers, backtracking a little bit now as the owner of a company, I had someone come to my office and they said, "Look, Brad, I want to work for you." And I said, "Well, I don't have a position." And they said, "No, I'll work for free. I'll work for free for 3 months, right, to get experience." And it's interesting changing that mindset, right? That, someone who's willing to come in just to learn, have that mentality, how that can make an impression on a business owner. So, you make those connections, you build that network, and that can catapult into other opportunities later in your career.
Interesting you mentioned that. So when I used to work for John Deere, and I did that in my career there as well. So I came out of the military and went to lead an assembly line, and I wanted to get into marketing. And I was a former infantryman, and at my office, I knocked down doors and jumped out of airplanes, right? Like, what do I know about marketing ground balers, right? But I did the same thing. I volunteered to work for the marketing guy while still doing my assembly line job just during the shutdown. And yeah, I ended up getting that marketing job, and then I did it again when I wanted to be a program manager. So that's a very valuable piece of advice. I mean, I know nobody likes taking a pay cut, but
well, no one does. But you look at it, it's funny because one of the tough things we all deal with and can appreciate is that you want a job and they say, "Well, what's your experience?" Right? Well, how do I get experience if you don't give me the job? And so, it's a tough thing, but how do you break down those doors and barriers? How do you connect? Networking is so key. And this is why I think social media is so important. As we're thinking about personal branding as permanent job security, how do you build a personal brand and a company brand? How do they coincide? How do you use that branding and social media to make connections and build your network, where you may have an opportunity now to work for a company or come to entry level and work your way up, or work as a free intern and not get compensated, but then have the connections and the relationships where, the experience on your resume. And so these are things, young entrepreneurs and young people should think about. And you don't have to be young. I mean, I was just speaking with someone who's in their late 30s saying, "I got to start over." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? You're going to be working to your 70." I mean, that's 30 years ahead of you. Like, why not hit the reset button and go do what you want to do and take a couple years? It's okay. I mean, a lot of us are living longer, so we're going to be working a long time.
Yeah. I also, I made a note here about kind of the interest, a $300 million project, and they're going to underpay their project manager. I mean, it sounds like they got lucky that they picked you, but that doesn't seem like a really winning strategy in my mind.
There is value, and I will say, I at the time I feel I had a lot of potential, and there was some experience, and they were leveraging that they saw the talents I could bring, but sometimes those don't align. Your skill set and your pay don't align always, and there's a few reasons why. And that's the goal, though. At some point, as you get the experience and the relationships, and they do align. But to your point, what you're thinking as a company, if you're doing a $350 million resort, well, you should have good people, a huge staff. And they did. I mean, in their defense, they did have, 30, 40 team members that out there working at different, ages and experience levels. So, it's really the team behind you, not just the individual.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. There's areas to save money. That wouldn't be on the top of my list of the guy managing my dang project. But okay, so you finished that project, and then what? Then you decided you were going to go and start your own company, or how did that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel that there's two reasons people are an entrepreneur. Either they're innate, they're born as an entrepreneur, or they're forced into being an entrepreneur, right? and I feel that mine was the latter. I didn't see myself as a huge entrepreneur at the time, although now I do. But at the time, is more forced out of necessity. This was the recession in Phoenix. The housing crash. This is 2011. We finished the hotel. We had some other projects, and there just wasn't a lot of opportunity for me at the firm I was at. I was looking at possibly making a career change at that time. And, there were some things that transpired and life events there that said, you know what, it's time to get my license and start my firm and start AFT. And really grateful I did. But that was one of those forced out of necessity, more than a plan to always go off and start my company. But since then, I've been fortunate to be surrounded by some amazing individuals, employees, and other business owners and executives that have really, I would say, taken me under their wing as far as, giving good counsel and leadership, and have helped us do what we've done today.
That's a good point. So how did you get that first client?
That's the toughest thing. I'm often asked, there's builders that say, Brad, I want to, I have the experience. I'm going off on my own. Where do I start? Right. And I'd say if you, and this isn't me, I'll get to my story, but I think in general for those listening, and I'll give the example of a home builder. If you want to build custom homes, well, the best thing to do is hopefully you have some connections or maybe some past clients that are of high net worth, and you can find some investors that will be willing to spec a house and pay you a small fee. You spec the house. They have the risk of investing the cash, but they also get all the upside of the profit from the spec. And you cut your teeth as a loss leader to have your sign in the ground and build a house and have a home on your website and something to your resume that you built a custom home, and you can catapult your career. And you call that a loss leader because you're not going to make a whole lot because you're not investing, you have no skin in the game, but finding some investors will help you get that head start. So that's the easiest way, I'd say. I did it the hard way. Again, going back to, looking back, I would have done a little bit different, but I was hitting the ground marketing, right? I worked former clients and architects and designers and people in my network saying, do you need to remodel your bathroom? Do you need to remodel your kitchen? I always knew that we'd be doing high-end custom. I always knew that we'd be doing commercial, but you have to start somewhere. And so I would start with these little bathrooms and kitchen remodels and start building the reputation. And really that's social media. As we get into social media, I said, okay, this is where I am today, but here's where I'm going. How do I market myself now through social media on my capabilities and where I want to be, not where I am today? And then leverage that where now I could start getting leads from social media and start building. And it's one thing after another, right? As you slowly build, your company growth.
So your strategy then, because it's interesting, I watch it now and I see some of the stuff you're putting out there, and I'm interested on, the type of person and client and how you're identifying them and taking that strategy, right? Because I don't know that too many of your clients are on TikTok.
No. No, there's a lot of trolls on TikTok, even though TikTok's super entertaining, right?
So it makes a lot of sense that if you were starting with kind of these smaller jobs, that you're going to find clients and potentials on there. So has your strategy changed, or how did it go in the beginning? And then how did you sort of evolve it to identify those folks that are looking for your particular finer touch?
That's a great question. And that's one that I think most of us struggle with. So, is interesting. I met with my former boss, when I started my company, trying to pick his brain. How do you get job leads? How do I get a custom home to call me? Where do I even know where to start? Right. And he didn't have the best advice. And so I went the social media route. And so what I learned was that there's a few ways people find you. I think people would be surprised to know that as of today, we have clients that are building multi-million-dollar custom homes that find us through Instagram, right? That find us through LinkedIn. I mean, these are people where they followed us for a couple of years on Instagram and LinkedIn, and you build that personality and that persona. You show your systems, you show, how our process, and they want to hire us to build their home. And so I have a lot of our leads that come direct from social media, which people would be surprised. Additionally, I'll say that, you kind of get your first big break. We had done some remodels. We had a client that knew our past experience and hired us to do their custom home. And then you leverage that. You put your sign up, you put it on your website, and then the neighbor knocks on your door, says, "Hey, we bought this lot next door. Will you talk to us about our build?" And so that's another avenue, right? And I would say even more importantly, it's interesting. When I started my company, being super young, there were a couple architects, well-known architects in town I reached out to and said, "Would you hire us? I'm Brad with AFT." I'd call them, I'd message, email them, and they'd never respond. And I'm like, okay. So I go on LinkedIn, I connect with them on LinkedIn, and I start posting, right? Consistently, as I do every day. I bother you guys every day with my post. And, these same architects started seeing that. It's repetition, right? 7 influences to close a sale. And what I love about social media, it's very unconfrontational, right? It's you don't have to solicit. It's I put it out there, they can consume it if they want. And I'm not saying, "Hey, give me a job." It's just, here's what we're doing.
Right.
And these architects, it caught their eye and they're like, "Brad, we're really impressed with your marketing, with what you're doing, these projects you're working on. Let's talk." So we have dinner and I give them some social media strategies. They give me a project, and here we are. So both these architects that wouldn't talk to me now have given me projects. And that's the value, right? That you look at, well, the reciprocity. Now, as I built these relationships with designers and architects and realtors, if they're not coming to me first, they're going to them. And that's a quick connection where they could refer us, after we've performed.
Are you, did you get into any groups like BNI or chambers or associations or anything like that?
That's a great question. We didn't. Um, and it wasn't by intent. It's just at the time I wasn't very familiar. I wasn't sure the ROI. Since then I've been in one group, which I'll explain, but no, I saw that, as you support people and as you build that network and that relationship, which social media does that very quickly. You can build quickly with people and connect, especially now with COVID, right?
Yeah.
Where a lot of people aren't at work or not at work, but not at the office, like maybe in the past. But yeah, right now we're part of Builder 20. And so this was a connection through social media. Builder 20 is a group of 20 builders that are in your same scope of work that build throughout the country. And you meet twice a year and you're non-competitive because you build in other cities and other states. And you share financials, you share trade secrets, you share what you pay your team, what you charge your client, what are SOP, how do you deal with these litigation or legal issues? So here I am with 19 builders that have been building for 20 years. They give me a ton of information and know-how and cheat sheets, if you will. And so that's the advantage, is that I actually made those connections through social media. So again, it's a connector, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's that's interesting. So tell me a little bit about your strategy, right? So you're on all these different platforms. Every one of them has a different content model. Are you guys replicating the same content and like how are you approaching each of these different groups?
I love that
are
question.
you the one behind it?
I love that question. And I am the one behind it. And it's a lot of time, and it's morphed into a lot more time as we've grown. But it's something that I handle a lot. I handle all of our business development, our marketing, and I do all of our training. And, and it's really important, our systems, right? Focusing on the company. I think most business owners need to get to a point where they can focus on the business and hire people that are better than they are to work in the business, right? And I feel that we've got to that point. We have some incredibly talented individuals that are very passionate about what we do and are highly skilled, which allows me to focus on the business and growth and customer relations and so forth. So that's really the business strategy. But as far as the marketing strategy, I tell people all the time, it can be very cumbersome, right? Yes, it's free, but it's time. Time costs money, even though time is free. So it's preparation. You want to put out good content. But what I love about social media is you can take the same content and you could put it on LinkedIn and you could put it on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok to some extent, even My Business Google, which is another app. Now, Biz Influence is another one, right? And so these are apps that are formatted differently with different audiences, different demographics. So I'm not a huge fan of apps that you put it in and it diversifies to each one and shoots it out to each. I like an organic one on each one because each platform's different. I'll use hashtags on Instagram, but I'm not going to use them on LinkedIn because it clutters the feed. And whereas Instagram, I can put it in the comment and it'll still give me the ROI, the investment of the hashtags. LinkedIn does not. And you need to understand who you're speaking to. Like on LinkedIn, I may have a different text because there's CEOs and doctors on there. Instagram is a different dynamic. TikTok, again, I'm going to have a little bit more fun and a little bit more casual. TikTok's a different audience. So understand the audiences are important, but you can recycle content between all of them.
I think that's important. And, I have focused, I've tried to be omnipresent. I'm not very good at it. So, I've kind of focused down and said, okay, what are the ones similar, that kind of ROI, and where are my clients at? Right. And so do the YouTube, LinkedIn, BizFluence, and I'm kind of just sort of focused there. I have the Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook and all that, but not like a super priority for me, just because I try and say, okay, the time is difficult, and I'm a little smaller than you and a little not quite as moved down the journey, right? So I still have a few more hats. Maybe when I get to hand off some of these hats, I can
It'll help.
Yeah. So that's an interesting point about tailoring. So and it's true. I have seen similar videos or pictures, across these different platforms, and the messaging slightly tweaked.
Yeah. And it's super key. I mean, the last thing you want to do, for example, Instagram gives you an option where you can share it and it will directly connect or link to LinkedIn. But the issue is LinkedIn, when it does that, all over the post, it has the Instagram snapshot. It says Instagram, you're advertising. TikTok, same thing. You can, do a video on TikTok, download it. But then there's an app called Save Talk where you can remove, the watermark TikTok on there. So it's a cleaner video, but still has the music. And then you could post that to LinkedIn. So that's where you kind of work through the different platforms and apps to make sure that it's nice and clean. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're looking at content, most people say, well, how do I grow my social media? It doesn't matter if you're doing construction or medical or financial. You need to put out content that engages the audience. If people spend time looking at that post or scrolling through or evaluating it, you're rewarded. All the platforms are essentially the same. They're competing for space, competing for eyeballs. So if you create content that they're engaged and want to see and stay on your page, then it's going to grow your feed or grow your profile.
So what is your strategy now? Like if you are doing that client acquisition piece, it sounds like, in the beginning, you've gotten already some clients out of the social media. What are you doing to target? Are you taking that person into consideration when creating this content to target them specifically?
Yeah, that's a great question. So whenever you're looking at your marketing strategy, you should never look at where you are today. You want to look at where your company's going to be or what you're marketing to. So for example, although I've done smaller remodels or done a bathroom, I'm not going to show on my social media a bathroom remodel, right? Because that's not the audience I'm catering to. So I'm going to show, the custom home because this is the client I'm trying to attract. So you want to market yourself on where your business is going and headed and the clientele that you want to advertise to. And with that said, not only is it important for the advertising message, I mean, don't be salesy. One thing I tell people, do not bombard them like, hey, we're a custom builder. I'm Brad Leavitt. Give me a call. Here's my phone number. Here's my email.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Create value for the client, right? In the sense that, look at this beautiful kitchen. Look at this amazing detail at the kitchen backsplash. Here's what our installer did. He cut this metal to 3 inches. It's gold. It's in between each tile, right? Point something out to bring them in, and that's it. I don't need to be salesy. They know where to find me. If they go to my profile, I have my email, my phone number, my collaboration, whatever. And so give them a reason to become a fan, to become a silent salesperson, right? To sell your brand. And that will build. And then, as you're thinking about just that marketing side, as you do that, and as you continue to sell that, and don't be afraid to share secrets and topics and give value to not only yourself, but people that follow you. Like I share openly, here's the apps we're using. Here's the technology we're using. Here's our systems. Here's how I plan, a home from day one. This is when we sit down and we're about to break ground. I bring in all my trades in our conference room and we sit down and we strategize how we're going to build this complex project. And everyone's in the room and they're accountable. They're exchanging cell phone numbers. No one's doing that in the market. We're doing these team walks with my entire team. And now I have builders all over the country doing this and crediting us saying, hey, we learned this from AFT. But what's happening, that's great. And you're going to have people that copy you, but that's not an issue. The final details, the clients watch. The clients say, well, I think AFT has a handle on this. They're doing this pre-planned construction meeting. They're doing these team walks. I want them to build my house. Right. And that's how you advertise to them.
Absolutely. I think people need to be less afraid of sharing that information. I actually had a client kind of teach me that one where she was kind of on the fence and was like, yeah, but I feel like I can do this myself. And I was like, okay, well, I'll talk you through my process. And I kind of told her, it was like, all right, so this is how we look at it. This is what I'm looking for on the invoice. And then, we're looking for these kinds of things. And then when this happens, then I go and I call and, these are the companies that I call. These are the competitors in the area. She finally said, stop. I don't want to do all that. I'm like, okay. I mean, but I'm telling you, that's what I do. So like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So, that thing of like sharing all of that stuff, right? It's not going to drive people away. It's actually going to bring them closer, because then afterwards they see, that value in what you're doing. And it sounds like you're just managing a project. I'm surprised that that's not standard. I was a project manager as well. And, every week I sat down with 16 different, organizations of engineering and supply management, manufacturing, put them all in the room and we all strategize together. It sounds like that's what you guys do.
That does not happen in residential at all. And that's why commercial does. In my commercial background, you do that. You're doing daily logs. You're tracking. It's a lot more official. Residentials fly by the seat of the pants. You're making changes as they go. And that's where we've tried to, really hone this in and say, no, we can apply principles that are successful in other industries or the commercial industry and bring them into residential. And that's what clients like to see. And they feel emotionally connected.
So what is the process when somebody comes to you to build a home right now? What does that look like? You talk to these architects now. So how do you get this idea that they have in their brain? Because I can imagine if I tried to explain to you, like some of this, like I could look at stuff and be like, oh, that's cool. Oh, that's neat. Oh, I'd like that, and I don't know. I don't know how I could convey that, because we're about to spend a whole lot of money, right? If we're doing business with you, like, if I don't like it, like, that's not okay either. Right. So how do you pull that vision out of somebody who's not in the same business?
So that's the hardest thing is, these are clients that are spending probably their biggest purchase of their life, right? Or a big portion of their life savings on this. And so we take that very seriously and we're sensitive to it. And so I do feel we have a little bit of a cheat sheet now with social media, because if a client were to come to me, and typically I'm the first one. So let's say you were to come to me and we're the first meeting, I get a good feel. Well, what's your living style? How big of a home do you need? Do you have visitors? Do you have guests? How many kids do you have? How do you entertain? Do you swim? These are all questions that we can kind of get a feel for the design. And then a lot of times, what homes do you love? Do you love modern? Do you love modern farmhouse? Do you love transitional? Do you love traditional, Victorian, whatever, Santa Barbara? And you can start getting a feel. And that's where the cheat sheet comes in, because all of our clients, no matter their savvy level, experience level on social media, they have pictures they like that they've seen on HGTV or on Pinterest or house. So they can show a picture and say, this is my style. I love this house. Now, right away, I have a good feel for the direction. And then I can put them in touch with the right architect and the right designer. Once I understand their budget and aesthetic, then I set them up with those meetings. Now we have the team. We have the architect, designer, builder. We work with the client, and now we work together. We create the floor plan, which is first. So the first thing is, based on everything you told me, we'll come up with the floor plan: bedrooms, office, kitchen, great room, indoor, outdoor living. Perfect. Then the next phase, we go vertical, right? We design what the house will look like. We figure out the heights of the ceilings. And at that point is really crucial, because when we get to that point, the architect can now run his direction with all the structurals and mechanicals and civil and grading and drainage. And the designer can start working on the interior. They can start picking cabinetry and flooring, countertops and light fixtures. And really, so now you're in the creative mode, and everyone's meeting. We're meeting a couple times a month, and it makes it really seamless for the client, where when we're ready to submit for permit, we know exactly the cabinet color, and I know the exterior brick. And so it's not that the client doesn't make changes and still have change orders, but we have a good basis starting point for costs and scheduling that allow us to be successful on the build.
Now, where in these builds do you come up with these wild, awesome ideas that the stuff that you guys are doing? Where does that pop up?
Now, that's another great question, because that is all over the place. I mean, we have some clients that are pretty prepared and say, hey, Brad, I want, my lazy river, in my backyard. And some clients that want their flow rider, which is like an automated surf wave pool, that we're going to be doing. I mean, we have some really cool stuff, or multi-sliders. But then you have some that, as you're building or in design, they see me post something and they're like, Brad, I saw you post that on Instagram. Can we put that in my house? So, and that has happened many times. And then you have other clients that, as we're designing, they see stuff on TV or Pinterest or wherever they find it, and they send it over. So, clients find some amazing things. And I will say, us builders, architects, designers are always researching too. We're seeing what's out there, what's trending, what people are doing. So as we're speaking to a client and understanding what they want, we may say, hey, we've seen this. What do you feel about this? What do you feel about, this board form concrete wall down to the basement? And they may say, we love it. Let's put it in. So it's kind of both sides bringing those ideas.
And how long does it take? Now, do they have to buy the land before they come and talk to you?
Yeah, great question. So in our situation, as a build-to-suit contractor, the client always owns the land. They purchase the land, and then we design the house to fit the land, right? And match the HOA or easements, city regulations. And so that's always the case. And then the timeline, if we were to start today, you're probably anywhere between 6 and 12 months of pre-construction, decisions, design, getting a permit, and then the build ranges, it ranges from probably 12 to 18 months to 2 years, even on some of these really big ones.
Wow. That's quite a long time.
Yeah. Well, we have a couple of projects over 30,000 square feet. So a 30,000 square foot home with,
that's a house.
Yeah. So a 30,000 square foot house with a lot of amenities.
That's an apartment complex.
It is. Trust me, it takes every bit of 2 years to get those done. So.
Wow. 30,000 square feet. The problem with something like that, whenever I see those, like, even if I had the money, my wife and I have had this conversation, like, if we could afford something like that, would you even want it? Well, like, I can't even think about cleaning something that big, and I get it. We would have people for that, but then, like, there's all these rooms that are unused. Like, I'm going to go sit in that one room just so that I feel like I'm getting my money's worth for paying for it.
Yeah, it's definitely, for most people, it doesn't work. But when you entertain or have a lot of company, then it does, right? It's all catered to them. It's, it's funny, because over the years, we've seen homes like in the early 2000s, people were just building big homes to be big homes. And then in the recession, it stopped and people are being more conservative. And we still are seeing a lot of clients that are very conservative with the square footage. But, the bigger ones we're doing are for purpose. And, I wouldn't say that any clients doing a big house are doing it just out of, to be boastful or be out there. They're doing it because it's very intentional on the space that they have and how they use it in family and who's going to be living with them and so forth. But even though people say, well, what do you mean 30,000? Trust me, they're going to put it to full use.
Yeah. Yeah. I come from a large family. I could see us putting it
Yeah.
to full use as well. Each of my parents are one of five. So
Wow.
just first cousins, I think. Well, they all live in Miami, and I left Miami when I was 4 years old. And I was third on my dad's side and first on my mom's side. And every time I've gone back, there has been a new family member
Wow.
since, and I'm 39 now. So that, and we travel there like once a year. So you just kind of like,
What's going on? I'm trying to remember everyone's name.
yeah, I don't. There are I have first cousins whose names I don't know. So it's interesting to me also that not only have you identified where your company's going, but also the type of work that you're going to do, because you mentioned, you're working on this net zero home, and that's not the only time I heard you mention doing it in a, limited emissions or no emissions or, whatever. I don't know if emissions is the right word.
But as
There's
far
the
as you
heavy
think
equipment guy in me.
sustainability and low impact on, resources. And, it's something we got involved in. We were fortunate to do a home in Scottsdale, and it was ICF, which is insulated concrete form. And that's what the exterior walls are, foam and concrete. They're not wood framing as you traditionally see. And it's more expensive, right, than a traditional wood framed wall. But the advantage is now you have a barrier for dust pollution, for dust
Hmm.
and, air pollution. You have a barrier against bugs, scorpions, termites. These are pros, right? Sound, a huge barrier against sound. And also it's more energy efficient. It's a tighter envelope. So you're using, less AC units, less mechanical, less tons to push through. So the home stays cooler. And these are things that are really important. So the building science home really, for those listening to what a net zero is, it means it produces as much energy as it consumes. And so, um, here there's a couple ways to do that. You either, when you think of a passive house or a net zero home, you either have on a daily basis, it produces as much as it consumes, or over the year. And that's important because there are different ways to classify it. Here in Phoenix, it's a little more difficult to have it on a daily net zero because, hey, in December, it's pretty easy to keep your home at a moderate temperature. It's pretty hard in July, right?
Yeah.
You got to run some AC units, which uses a lot of energy. But how you put solar power and you have battery walls and backup, and then how you have triple glaze or quad glaze windows,
Hmm.
and how we design the truss system and the exterior walls, how we insulate the slab, before we pour the slab. And these are things that create this tight envelope that allows the client to use less resources. And we're in the desert. I mean, let's be realistic. So we get monsoons. So he has a water retention basin that is going to catch the water. And then there's a filtration system that filters it. That now he can use that rainwater for all the landscaping around his house. So down that way, he's not using city water, which is going to help the community. So you think about water savings, you think about electrical savings, and just energy in general.
Do you have a preferred solar panel? Like how does somebody make a decision? Maybe somebody that isn't buying a multi-million-dollar home, and they want to, put some panels out on their house. Do you have an idea on how to approach that?
That's a good question. So it's funny. All of our clients say, I'd love to get those Tesla roof tiles, right? The
Yeah. What do you
Tesla
think about
system.
those, by the way?
They're from everything I can see. I mean, I know a lot of people say, hey, they seem cheaper than a regular roof, which they're not. We know that Tesla's not cheaper than a regular roof system. The designs are amazing. And
Yeah.
we're working with the vendor now. It's really them getting up and running to a position where they're going to be more readily available, right? But when you think of solar in general, there's a lot of solar companies. And so it's finding the right fit as far as, a lot of things in our business are relationship driven, in the sense that when a lot of the products that I use, will that person pick up the phone? Will they deliver? When there's a warranty issue, will they resolve it? There's value there. And so as you're making solar power, a lot of them use the same solar panels. It's just a different person who's handling, a different company structure that's handling it. So at the end of the day, who's going to perform and service that? That's what's most important. And that's what we look at.
Yeah. So you haven't tried out the Tesla panels yet?
Not yet, but we have a client right now begging for it. So we're actually working with Tesla's rep to design it. We actually just send them all the electrical calcs so they can do their takeoff, and hopefully put those solar tiles and a Tesla battery backup wall.
Right. I was gonna say, you know, and you got to have the vehicle charging station too, right?
Absolutely, you have to. It's all
It's
branding.
it's ingenious, man. Honestly, you know, to take something that is generally an eyesore, right, and make it beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
and compelling and really invisible. So I think that's great. And then the battery, and of course, being out here in Arizona, like, you know, our 350 plus days of sunshine,
Yep.
um, solar it's a smart move, right?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting. So this net zero home, that is like it's commissioned that way. Like as a plan, it's going to be
100%. It's designed to be net zero. We have a lot of vendors participating, you know, from LP to Pella to Sub-Zero Wolf and Fox Blocks for ICF. A lot of companies are part of this. It's going to be an amazing project. In fact, we break ground on next month, early May, and I'll be doing a lot of informative videos and documentation of the building science techniques and installs and some of the products we're using throughout the course of construction. And it will be open a year after we finish for the public to view, which will be fun. So yeah, our YouTube channel, we'll spend a lot of time and we'll make sure it's documented, you know, on a series, episode 1, 2, 3 of the Net Zero Home.
Now, is that something that's going to be something that you can replicate? Is it something that you can do for what was it that you call production level homes, or is that?
Yeah, and that's the goal. I mean, really, just like anything, you know, when the flat screen TV first came out, it was very expensive, but as the demand grows, right, prices come down. You know, you start to supply and demand, and it's very common economics that we all understand. And it's very similar where when you don't understand something or the labor force does not understand it, they throw big numbers at it because they don't want to lose, right, when they're bidding. And what you see is this becomes more common practice doing this style home. There's less unknowns to the architect, to the engineer, to the installers, and the prices will come down. And so the goal would be you take this model per se and you buy a piece of land and you do 6 or 8 net zero like net zero homes in the community, and then sell those. And that is the game plan some point down the road.
That's really cool. You know, as I've always been interested in alternative means of construction. So I mentioned my family's originally from Miami. And I remember I wasn't there, but after Hurricane Andrew, the damage, I mean, that the city was absolutely, it was decimated. Right. And that image of just flatness. I mean, it looked like Phoenix, right? Like it was flat desert, almost in a swamp. And that stuck with me. And so since then, like traveling and going to different places in the US and seeing the wood frame construction, it's always like, it makes me uncomfortable to think like, I live in a wood frame construction, how like those things just went like straight
blow
over.
Right?
Yeah. You know, and then in Miami now, the construction is all like these cinder block homes, which is heavy and it's expensive and it's hard to work with. And so I've always looked at, you know, different construction types, materials and the like. And it's true, like you say, that, you know, with everything, when it's new, it tends to be, you know, more expensive and hard to get approvals, and, you know, city governments don't allow it and the like. And I'm curious if you've looked into any of these other alternative construction methodologies, like aircrete or some of this, the bags that they do. And, you know, is any of that stuff like scalable? Because I've seen a lot of people do it individually, or is it even worthwhile? Like, what are your thoughts on some of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. When you think scalable, it's always tough. You know, I work in the custom world, which you try to scale or sequence things, and it's very difficult because everything's being built for the first time. But I will say some of the technologies, you know, whether, you know, we have people doing rammed earth, which is like, think of like mud exterior walls, right? Or I actually just had a meeting last week with a company that's really, I don't want to say knockoff, just a different variation of the ICF. So ICF is where, think of big Lego blocks that are 12 inches thick, and it's styrofoam, and you fill the middle with concrete. You set them up blocks and you fill it with concrete and rebar. Well, they have a product and it's cold steel. So you think of steel framing, and it's filled with insulation, foam insulation. So these blocks, you're building them, and the tensile force of these walls are incredibly strong. You could build big structures, you can run them, as floor trusses, and they're just built out of metal framing and insulation. And that's something we've looked into. Well, how can we build something that's going to be a little more cost effective and still have the structural integrity? So there's a lot of products and companies out there. I know when you think of panelization, homes that are framed in a shop, if you will, in a manufacturing facility, and the walls are built and they ship out, and you're framing the house now in 4 days as opposed to 3 months.
Right.
There's value there, and it's just a little bit more planning, a little bit more configuration, but there's a lot of resources out there.
Have you looked into any of like the 3D homes or any of those things?
I've seen a lot of people sending the videos on the 3D concrete as they're pouring the concrete walls, which are pretty fascinating. And to be honest, I haven't spent a ton of time researching those to understand the pros and cons and cost structure of that. But it's amazing. We're going to see a lot of advances. Every industry seems to advance quite a bit, and we're a little behind in construction for some reason.
I think the barrier to entry is really high. And I think that's also probably why we're seeing so many of these alternative methods of construction, because the barrier of entry is so high. Like, what can I build with just my hands without a machine, right? Or if I need a machine like a 3D printer, that it does it all, right? And in 48 hours, my home is built, or whatever it is. I don't know. So that's, but then of course, the production assembly line guy in me looks at that and says, okay, well, how would you even scale that? And like, it's an interesting concept. But in order to make it affordable, and if we want to maximize it, we'd have to be able to scale it somehow. And so, I was just wondering, from somebody that's in the industry and that's doing this all the time, the conversations that are happening. And, you said you've got your 20 other builders that you guys are chatting with. I wonder if are conversations like these ever something that you approach?
They are. And I'd say like California, they're going to be moving to making all homes net zero. So parts of Canada have already done that. So whether we choose to, or the government forces us in some way, there's going to be a need for that. And it is happening. Those conversations are happening. And, as we start to understand the installs better and the technology and the material, it will help at the industry whole, right, to build some better homes. I feel that it's going that way already.
So who is the typical person that you're looking for, or that should, that maybe if they're listening to this, or that we should send this to and say, this is the right person to talk to you about AFT?
That's a great question. I anybody, and it's funny, they come in all different shapes and sizes, in the sense that we have a lot of clients that are first time builders, in the sense they've never built a custom home, and here they are on their first venture. We have others that have built 4 or 5. We have others that know the process, some that don't. We have some that are contractors and hire us because they're busy doing their thing. So they come all over. But I'd say the ideal client is someone that understands our value, right? That is looking to hire a builder that, so many of it, which is important. I mean, a lot of us get stuck on price, and really, they say, it's really tough to work around that price to understand, well, what are the other values brought, whether it's communication or organization or systems in place. And so the right client for us is someone that, I would say, trust the process, right? That understands the value of the designer, of the architect, that's the other professional involved, the builder, and allows the team to be successful. I use the tagline, saving marriages one house at a time, right? It's a very complicated and stressful process. And so the clients that say, hey, Brad, we're here, we trust you, and, go build us a beautiful home, and then we'll focus on our business to, those are the ideal clients, right? So those would be the perfect clients.
What about location wise?
Location for us, we work North Phoenix, so we're pretty much Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, Arcadia, and then in the East Valley, like Gilbert, Chandler.
Okay, awesome. And then, do you have a preferred social media home where they can find you?
I do. Probably the main one is Instagram, AFT Construction. It's AFT_construction, Brad Leavitt. And I manage our Instagram. So when you're messaging there, it's me. And LinkedIn's pretty easy. You can just search Brad Leavitt. And then all the other platforms are AFT Construction. And I'm behind those as well.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time and coming out and chatting with me and answering all of my kind of off the wall questions. Very, very interesting stuff. And yeah, if there's anything else that you'd like to tell the team or the listener, whoever, uh, please go
Well,
ahead.
yeah, well, this is amazing. Really appreciate the opportunity and amazing questions. I just love the conversation and could speak about social media marketing probably till I'm blue in the face. It's a fun topic.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot. And I'd say if anybody's listened to this point, and you haven't like looked for Brad or followed or subscribed, I think you're making a mistake because you've already given us an hour of your time. So make it worthwhile. More to come. So thank you all.